Building Back Better was the central theme of Joe Biden's presidential campaign. It's what the country needs. This is all very much on the right track. I'm particularly excited about the infrastructure investment program. I'm particularly excited about the green aspects. I think we've seen in this Zoom era how important it is to universalize broadband to reach every American. These are investments that are going to pay off in a growing economy and are going to, I think, generate significant tax revenue down the road that they have not taken any credit for. These are investments that are backloaded. Very little of this money is going to be spent in the next several years when I think overheating is a substantial risk. So I think this is very, very much in the right direction. Mm-hmm. Frankly, I'd have liked to see infrastructure investments and green investments closer to the scale that the president talked about during his campaign, because I think both on building the economy's capacity grounds and, frankly, after this current period when we're likely to have an overheat and secular stagnation returns, we could do more. But as you said, the president's going to be unveiling his plans in several stages, and we don't have the full picture yet. But on net, I'm encouraged by what I see.
Well, you've had the era of presidents in the past and other policy makers here. And so when you talk about these sort of grand economic proposals, just with regards to the political will to get this type of stuff done, is it better to do these sort of grand proposals, these sort of where you're sort of doing it in these big blocks, these big stages, or is it more important maybe to narrow down the focus and say, just pitch something that's only on renewable energy and then come back and maybe do something that's only on something different? What's the approach?
I don't presume to have any sense at all that I'm going to be able to judge the way to get things through Congress better than Joe Biden. And I can't imagine a better advisor than his chief of staff, Ron Klain, who has immense advice and experience on these matters. And my former colleague, Brian Deese at the NEC, these are people who've got decades of experience in managing their way through the political system. In general, I think combining things is likely to be a good idea. It's likely to be a good idea because it lets you tap into multiple different sources of support. It's likely to be a good idea because it's such a lift to get anything through, particularly the Senate, given all the procedural ways of delaying things, that I think creating a combination is a good idea. I was worried that the previous bill didn't have any public investment and thought that public investment should have been combined into that bill. So, but I might have been wrong about that. I think the crucial point is that combining these things is very much the right thing. Are these exactly the priorities I would have pursued? I think I would have emphasized more the infrastructure and emphasized more the green investments, given the threat to the planet. And I probably would have put less emphasis on some of the other investments in the bill, though to be clear, I do not mean to slight the R&D investments, which I think are profoundly important as we compete with China. You know, I think the president said something immensely important about a week ago at his press conference.
What's that?
When he said that what's at issue in U.S. domestic policy is the viability of democracy as a government model. And the more we are able to make investments that show that we can stay true to our political traditions and also be the economy that delivers best for the mainstream across our society and all its elements, the stronger we're going to be globally at a time when we're being tested.
I am curious, though, when we talk about paying for this, we've seen a major part of this proposal is raising the corporate tax rate, that effective corporate tax rate, to about 28%, up from around 21% where it is right now. No doubt that that's going to meet some resistance here. But we've heard from Deese and others who've basically said, look, this is an investment, and over time it will somehow pay for itself, and that increase in taxation, that somehow there'll be some benefit, not only to society, but to those companies as well.
Look, we are collecting only 1% of GDP in corporate taxes. That's perhaps less than half of what we used to collect. The business community's wish list was only to get the corporate tax rate down to 25%. And the 21% was some kind of fluke driven by President Trump that the business community had not even asked for. I defy any serious analyst to suggest that an excess cost of capital is an inhibition to any important private investment in the United States today. That's always been the traditional argument against a corporate tax increase, that it'll raise the cost of capital. But if you look at where price earnings ratios are, if you look at where the interest rates, real interest rates are, if you look at the fact that there's first year write-off, and so the value of all the deductions that people get when they invest goes way up with this change, I don't think it's plausible to argue that this is going to substantially damage investments incentives. I think
absolutely.
It's absolutely the right thing to have done.
I mean, it certainly makes perfect economic sense here, but you go back through time here, and we've seen other attempts here at raising that effective corporate tax rate, and it's pretty much failed. We've been on a downtrend here for quite some time, pretty much going back to the mid-'80s when we were above something like 30% here. You now have a corporate tax rate that, by most measures, is actually below the personal tax rate right now. Is there sort of a way where you can actually nudge that tax rate up, back up to pre-Trump levels, pre-Obama levels, even to a certain extent pre-George W. Bush levels, without actually getting the backlash that seems to already have started?
Well, I don't really understand what you're talking about, because the corporate tax rate was in the 30s through George W. Bush. The corporate tax rate was in the 30s through Obama. The corporate tax rate was in the 30s since through the Clinton administration. So I don't really see that there's substantial damage here. And I think that economists all understand that you have to look at the corporate tax rate also in line with the tax treatment of investment. And we've got unprecedentedly generous tax treatment of investment with expensing of equipment and expensing of intangible investments. The fact that they can be written off in the first year. And so if you look at the combined nexus, again, I repeat, I would challenge anyone to suggest that cost of capital is a substantial inhibitor to investment. There is an argument that some people will make that that people will relocate their income abroad in response to a 28% corporate tax rate. But that's why I've been so excited about the advocacy that Secretary Yellen has engaged in of global cooperation to ensure that we don't have ruinous tax competition through transfer pricing. Look, I'm someone who in Democratic administrations has spoken all the time about the importance of maintaining business confidence, about the importance of cooperating with business, who's been very skeptical of a variety of the things that Senator Warren and Senator Sanders have suggested. I am not concerned by corporate tax increases of this magnitude. I think they'll make us more fair. I think they'll inhibit a variety of tax sheltering activities. And that's before you even get to the substantial benefits that are going to come from accelerating the electrification of the economy, from repairing a infrastructure that in many ways is a national embarrassment.